106.5? It's time now for Front Page Jacksonville, a show that delves into the issues that affect you. We believe in transparency and providing only the facts. And now, here's Octavius Davis.
I truly hope that you and your loved ones are doing well. So there's a lot that I'd like to get into today. Let's start off with some light stuff first. As we go throughout the next 2 hours, some of the different topics that we'll have an opportunity to touch on is going to be a little weighty. You know, some of it may pull on your heartstrings a little bit. Some of it may cause you to step back and think through some things. But nonetheless, I want to start off with some light things first. So I'm going to go ahead and throw the phone number out there now because some of you may want to jump in at any point, any of the different topics that we touch on today. I definitely welcome your feedback and comments. The number that you want to call is 833-758-1065. That's 833-758-1065 is the number that you want to call if you'd like to comment on anything here on Front Page Jacksonville. One quick thing before I go to our first topic for the day. I mentioned that this past week I was on vacation. Now, for all of the pop-pops listening right now, I want to put you on notice, okay? A few weeks ago I shared that I am a pop-pop. I have 2 granddaughters and have another grandchild on the way. I'm not a grandfather. I'm not a granddad. I am a pop-pop. So for all the other pop-pops listening right now, I just want to put you on notice. I am the best pop-pop in the world. Okay. Now, these aren't my words. These are the words of my granddaughter, specifically Chloe. I had the pleasure, the honor, the esteemed privilege of being able to pick her up from VPK on this past Friday. And because Pop was on vacation, my wife had some things she had to do. My daughter had some things she had to do. I said, don't worry about it. Pop got this. So I went and picked Chloe up from VPK. And I already knew in my head what I wanted to do. I wanted to spend some time with her. So I got her in the car, got her situated in her car seat. I said, hey, sweetie, what would you like to do today? She said, I want to go home and I want to eat the candy that mommy bought me. I said, that sounds like a lot of fun. I said, but you want to know what else sounds fun? She said, yeah. I said, well, we can go home and eat the candy that mommy bought you, or you and Pop can go for ice cream. Who you think won, huh? Pop. We went for ice cream. Okay? We went for ice cream. And when we went for ice cream, it was just me and Chloe. I didn't see any other pop-pops out there having ice cream with their granddaughter or their grandson. It was just me and Chloe. And I said, well, Chloe, is your ice cream good? She said, yeah. And then she went on to say, you're the best pop in the world. Case closed. Argument is made. So if you're a pop listening right now, I just thought it was my responsibility to serve you notice on this good Sunday morning. I'm the best. Step your game up, okay? Use some of that PTO and go get them babies and go take them to get some ice cream. Why? Because those are the types of memories that they will always cherish. Those are the types of moments and opportunities that money can't buy. So capitalize on them while you can, when you can, because, man, it feels good to be the best pop in the world. Now, of course, I'm being facetious. I'm playing with y'all. Look, don't be outside waiting for me when I leave the studio, okay? Don't come jumping in my DMs all on social media because you feel some kind of way because I'm now the best pop in the world. Look, these aren't my words. This is what Chloe said. I'm just conveying to you what Boo-Boo, I call her Boo-Boo. This is what Boo-Boo said. And if you want to do something about it, then do something about it. Be the best pop in the world to your grandbabies. But as pop-pops, we got to keep representing. Those grandbabies need us. 833-758-1065 is the number to call if you'd like to jump on Front Page Jacksonville. So let's get right on into it. Yesterday, the 55th annual Northwest Classic hit the north side of Jacksonville. if you are not familiar with the Northwest Classic, it's always hilarious to me watching current students, faculty members, and alum of William M. Raines High School go back and forth with current faculty members, students, and alum of Jean Ribault High School. So the 55th Annual Northwest Classic is an annual football game, and I can't even call it a football game. I apologize to both of those schools because it's really an experience. I've never been to the Northwest Classic. Let me put that out there right now. I did not attend Raines or Ribault. I went to Sandalwood. But I don't care what high school you went to in the city of Jacksonville. It is impossible to not hear about or experience the Northwest Classic, because it is just that. It is an experience. Two predominantly African-American high schools here in the city of Jacksonville for the past 55 years have gone head-to-head in the gridiron, in the classroom, in the community, because their rivalry does not end once they graduate. It's definitely a lifelong rivalry. But Raines appears to be winning that rivalry. I think yesterday was the 7th straight victory over Ribault. Raines beat them 52-12 is what I'm hearing. 52-12. Ribault. Did y'all get off the bus? Did y'all even show up to the game? Sheesh. Parades, culture, community, and of course, vendors and food. All of that goes down at the Northwest Classic. So if you're an alum of either Raines or Ribault, I would love to hear from you this morning, especially if you were at the Northwest Classic. Would love to hear what that experience was like for you yesterday. 833-758-1065 is the number to call if you'd like to jump in. But I'll be honest, sometimes I get a little jealous because I think our rival back in the day was maybe Fletcher, but it was never to the level of what the Northwest Classic does here in Jacksonville. And with the Northwest Classic, it is both of those schools, both of those communities. Now, granted, Raines and Ribault are right up the street from one another. So when I'm speaking about community, I'm speaking about the alumni community, the student community of each of those individual schools, how they've come together to essentially put together a heritage, a staple right here in the community that they're proud of and other schools are jealous of. Because I just admitted, I'm a little salty because I don't have that type of thing that they have. And it's a thing. No love lost. As a matter of fact, it's all love, but they go hard after one another. So congratulations to William M. Raines for defeating Jean Ribault yet again, 52-12. Maybe it'll be different when basketball season is here. So maybe it'll be a bit different on the basketball court. Now, I do know Raines ain't nothing to mess with. Well, they used to not be nothing to mess with on the basketball court. Ribault, that is. I know they used to not be anything to play with on the basketball court. So maybe y'all can get some get back during basketball season. Maybe the basketball team will avenge what the football team couldn't get accomplished because 7 straight losses, somebody got to do something. Somebody got to do something different over there at Ribault High School if you plan to do anything with Raines. Also, Hurricane Milton. We have another hurricane that's forming out there in the Gulf Coast. So get ready. Get ready. Whatever that means for you. Now, I'll admit during Helene, I didn't necessarily stock up on the water and all those different hurricane preparedness things that meteorologists tell us that we should do. I think I'm going to do that this go round. It's better to be safe than sorry. I'm going to definitely do that this go round. Make certain that we have enough supplies just in case. Now, with Helene the other week, we didn't lose any power. Thankfully, we didn't lose internet or anything of that nature. Had a tree come down that I'll be getting taken care of today. Shout out to Jadiel for coming through to get that taken care of for me today. But we got another one coming, Hurricane Milton. And if I'm not mistaken, in another week or so, there's an additional potential hurricane that will be coming our way. So if you have family who has been impacted by Helene, if you and your family were impacted by Helene and now Hurricane Milton is coming around the bend, so to speak, please be safe. Please be careful. Don't take any unnecessary risks. If they issue evacuation zones, please adhere to those evacuations so that you and your family can be safe throughout this process. The property, it's not worth it. And I spend a lot of time on social media, and I'm going to talk to us Jacksonvillians for a moment, because it really applies to all Floridians, but we right here in Duval. So I want to talk to you for a moment. Please take this stuff seriously, because we are so unserious on social media, especially come hurricane season. And it's all fun and games, especially when it misses us, especially when we don't have significant damage and death and destruction here in our area. But please still take it seriously. At least make certain that you and your family have all the essentials that you'll need to be able to hunker down if need be, so that you can be safe until the storm passes. Like I said, I'm guilty. We need to re-up on flashlights. Every year, we used to stock up on all of that. My wife and I, we would have all that stuff situated. But back then, our son, he was younger. So flashlights, they turned into lightsabers. We ate up all the hurricane snacks before it even started raining, But we got to do better this year. So with Hurricane Milton, we'll go and we'll get some items so that we can be prepared. Hey, there's a lot more coming up. This is Front Page Jacksonville. I'm Octavius Davis.
The heartbeat of the community. Front Page Jacksonville returns on Hot 106.5.
Could you imagine going outside and seeing an onslaught of missiles rain down from the sky? How about going to the corner store and then suddenly, out of nowhere, explosions and fire consumes everything around you? How jarring would that be? I'm sure it would almost seem as though it's surreal, or kind of like feeling like you're in a dream state of, this can't be reality. Unfortunately, that is the reality of what's happening right now in Israel. Have you seen some of the images coming out of Israel over the past couple of days? Terrifying. I could not imagine, and I hope to heaven never have to experience what these people go through on a regular basis in that part of the world. Israel is currently on the brink of war with 7 different groups: Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, I believe it's pronounced Houthis. There are terrorist groups in the West Bank and 2 different Shiite militias, one from Iraq, the other from Syria, that Israel is currently at odds with. And for years, from the outside looking in, of course, from my perspective, this is something that I've seen repetitively in the news for years. And quite honestly, I don't fully understand all of the things that has gone into creating this situation there in Israel, but it's dire from the standpoint of just the consistent tension, the consistent war, but then also the destruction that follows. I was able to at least glean this little bit of information. Key aspects of the conflict include the Israeli occupation of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, the status of Jerusalem, Israeli settlements, borders, security, water rights, the permit regime, Palestinian freedom of movement, and the Palestinian rights of return. So apparently all these different dynamics are what's creating this conflict that we see there in Israel. But again, I'm no expert on Middle East relations or politics or humanitarianism. So if there's additional context that you'd like to fill me in on, I'd be happy to receive it. The number to call is 833-758-1065. That's 833-758-1065 if you'd like to jump on Front Page Jacksonville. Before bringing it back locally, there's one other story that I'd like to touch on nationally. The Menendez brothers. I think there's a Netflix movie that recently came out, and is it just me? But it seems like each time there's a Netflix movie about, someone's life, usually it's revolving around, murders or some sort of discord. Right around that same time, if the individuals are still alive and in prison, there's talks about either freeing them or there's a book deal. And I'm sure all of this stuff is orchestrated. I'm sure all of this stuff is timed to kind of drop the way that it does. But the Menendez brothers they've been back in the news over the past couple of days just because of the Netflix film that recently dropped. But in addition to that, Kim Kardashian West, I don't know if she ever took on Kanye's last name or not, but she's also calling for their freedom. I don't recall a whole lot about the Menendez trial. And quite honestly, I'm not going to watch the Netflix movie. I don't enjoy, nor do I understand the lure with like crime shows and documentaries like this. It's just not my jam. I don't get into that kind of stuff. But apparently, something that this movie delves into, and what Kim Kardashian is also, I guess you can say, using as her platform to call for their freedom, is with what some of the brothers went through, some of the things the brothers went through. Apparently, both brothers said they had been sexually, physically, and emotionally abused for years by their parents. And apparently, those factors, and I'm sure some other things, are what led up to them making the decision to commit the crimes that they did against their parents, ending their parents' lives. Now, again, this isn't information that I keep in my mental storehouse. So I don't know all the ins and outs that went into their trial. I don't. I do recall when it hit the news, I do recall them being sentenced, but I don't know a whole lot beyond that. But, is that your thing? And ironically, I speak with, I'll phrase it this way. I've spoken with different women. I won't say I talk to a lot of different women because that can give the wrong impression. No. That's not what I'm saying. I don't talk to a whole lot of women. However, I have had conversations with different women who have said they enjoy like the, I can't even think of the name of the shows, but like Snapped, shows like Snap, where women, commit these different crimes, and just different crime shows like that. First 48. I don't get it. I'm not sitting back observing how other people's commit crimes. And I'm not trying to figure out how to do different crimes myself. So I kind of stay away from that stuff. But again, I'm not judging. If that's your thing, let it be your thing. It's just not my jam. So let's look at what's going on here locally. Again, 833-758-1065. That's 833-758-1065 is the number to call if you'd like to jump in here on Front Page Jacksonville. There are several different laws that went into effect on October 1st. The first of which that I'll speak of is Florida's public sleeping ban. Florida's ban on public sleeping and camping officially went into effect this past Tuesday, as did local legislation creating penalties and a new outreach program team. However, many parts of Mayor Deegan's plan to address this issue has not yet been put in place. Deegan's plan initially called for $13.6 million to be spent on several initiatives, including hotel rooms, expanded shelter bed capacity, and a shelter village. But all those different things aren't in place yet. A bill creating penalties for public sleeping and camping was also passed. So, if you spend time in downtown Jacksonville, as I'm sure most of us have, it is impossible to drive through downtown Jacksonville and not see the reality of so many of the citizens here in Jacksonville, right in downtown, that are displaced, that are homeless. And so this public sleeping ban directly impacts them. I've seen, and it's usually right there along what is that, I think Union Street. On Saturday mornings in particular, when I drive through downtown Union Street, I see the different communities that they've created for themselves. This public sleeping ban is going to directly impact that, essentially preventing them from being able to set up those campsites and things of that nature. Offenses could result in a $50 fine and up to 30 days in jail. However, the Jacksonville Fire and Rescue Department would be the first point of contact, and JSO, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, would intervene as a last resort as they're working to prevent individuals from the public sleeping and as well as the camping downtown. Shout out to many of the different organizations right here in our city that are working diligently to provide shelter, food, clothing, and resources to the individuals who find themselves displaced. Trinity Rescue Mission comes to mind immediately. The City Rescue Mission comes to mind. The Clara White Mission comes to mind. The Center of Hope comes to mind. Different organizations who are boots on the ground in contact with individuals who are experiencing real life challenges. And sometimes things happen. As you and I know, life be lifing. So you factor in the fact that life be lifing, and life is gonna life, regardless of who you are, what walk of life you come from, and so forth. Now you add on top of that inflation. Let's throw another caveat into the mix. Mental health challenges. Those three things alone could be a perfect storm to cause someone's whole world to flip upside down. And so I say that as an opportunity for us to continue to distribute compassion towards those individuals whom this ban is seeking to target. Because when I read the story, the first thing that came to my mind was, where are they going to get the $50 from? You're going to cite them with with a $50 fine. Where are they going to get the money from? Now, I'm not talking about panhandlers who be out there hustling. That's a whole nother topic for a different day. I'm speaking about individuals who legitimately find themselves displaced. And so sleeping in public places, I mean, that's their last resort. Because whether you know it or not, the City Rescue Mission, they have a limit of how many people they can take in. The Trinity Rescue Mission has a limit with how many people they can take in. Once they hit that limit, and if there aren't any other organizations that they can go to, if there aren't any other resources available that they can go to, the Sulzbacher Center is another one that provides resources for individuals here in the community, especially those who are displaced. What are they supposed to do is my question. What else are we asking them to do? And granted, someone can easily say, well, look, they need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Why don't they go get a job? Well, that's very easy to say when you don't know the situation. Quick fun fact for you. Did you know that many of the men and women that are homeless in this country were previously boys and girls who came through the foster care system and eventually aged out of the foster care system? And once aging out of the foster care system, there were no resources to help them successfully transition to that next step. There were no parents to help them understand how to transition from being a teenager to being a young adult and developing those life skills necessary, driver's licensing and managing a bank account and how to do a job interview and how to do all the different things that some of us who are more fortunate to be able to experience learned how to do, either from a parent, an auntie, grandma, mentor, teacher. And so we can't allow ourselves to become apathetic to what some individuals may be experiencing who just so happen to find themselves living on the streets. Because you know as well as I, the way that this economy is, many of us are one paycheck away ourselves. Let's keep it a buck. We're one paycheck away. And so I'm glad to see that Mayor Deegan at least has a plan to provide additional resources and support for these residents of the city of Jacksonville. They are residents here in the city of Jacksonville, although they don't have a domicile to call their home. I'm happy to see that there is something at least in the works to be able to help expand capacity for beds, to be able to create a shelter village and provide hotel rooms and so forth for these individuals because they're human. And unfortunately, things happen. Sometimes it's due to our own decisions. Sometimes it's things that happen that are beyond our control. But nonetheless, I am happy to see that. 833-758-1065 is the number to call if you'd like to share your thoughts, your comments on the Florida public sleeping ban. I don't know why that is like a tongue twister for me. The Florida public sleeping ban. But here's the thing. That's not the only new law that took effect in the state of Florida on October 1st. There are 34 new laws that came into effect on October 1st. So I'm going to spare you. I'm not going to give you the entire list, but I just want to quickly touch on a few of these things because it's important to know ignorance of the laws is no excuse. So we at least have to be familiar with some of these things that changed, because if we're driving and then we get pulled over, we can't say, oh, I didn't know that had changed, because what had happened was, no, Officer Friendly not going for that. All right, so HB 341 is a SAFE Act The Safeguarding American Families Everywhere Act requires motor vehicle registration forms to include an option for applicants to indicate whether they or their child have a specific disability, including autism, ADHD, Down syndrome, Alzheimer's, traumatic brain injury, PTSD, diabetes, and so forth. That's now a new law. Another one, I'm going to go down to the one that caught my eye because there are two in particular that I thought are very, very important. HB 801, Alzheimer's training for law enforcement. HB 801 requires the Federal Department of Law Enforcement, FDLE, to create online training for law enforcement on interacting with people with Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia, with guidance on recognizing symptoms, effective communication, avoiding physical restraints, and identifying signs of abuse, neglect, or exploitation. I'm hoping this goes a little bit deeper than just Alzheimer's, but and I haven't had an opportunity to look at the full law itself, but I'm hoping it touches on other forms of mental illness that a person may have. Because there are times where we've seen in the news where law enforcement shows up on the scene and there's an overreaction of force used on an individual who may have a mental challenge and may not be able to control what they're currently experiencing. Maybe having an episode and they need help. They don't need restraint. They need support. They don't need to be arrested. They need services. They don't need to be killed. So glad that at least this law is now in place. There's another one that caught my attention. Here it is, HB 1389. HB 1389, digital voyeurism. This particular law strengthens penalties for those involved in digital voyeurism, particularly when the offender is over 18 years old and has a position of authority over the victim. This also includes those Airbnb owners who have been placing secret cameras all up and through their property. Yeah, that falls up under HB 1389 as well. If you'd like to read up more on each of the 34 new laws, I want to encourage you to go to actionnewsjax.com is where you'll be able to find it there on their website. Hey, we have a lot more coming up here on Front Page Jacksonville. In the 7 o'clock hour, we have the local president for the ILA 14. Let me get the exact union that he's over. Local 1408, Warren Smith, he's the president of the ILA, Local 1408. He'll be joining us in the 7 o'clock hour to talk about the longshoremen. You know, they were on strike earlier this week, but they came to terms and agreements very quickly. We'll have a chance to talk about that more on the other side.
Hot 106.5, it's time now for Front Page Jacksonville, a show that delves into the issues that affect you. We believe in transparency and providing only the facts. And now, here's Octavius Davis.
833-758-1065 is the number to call if you'd like to jump in on the conversation to talk about either of the topics we've discussed so far on the show. So far, we spoke about the Florida public sleeping ban that went into effect on October 1st, but there are 33 additional new laws that went into effect on October 1st here in the state of Florida. We also spoke about the Menendez brothers, Kim Kardashian. She's calling for them to be freed. And if you aren't aware, there's a new Netflix movie that came out about them this past week. We also touched on very lightly and very briefly, because I am not educated on all things Middle East, but we did talk very briefly about the attacks that Israel is currently under. 7 different groups that they're at odds with. And Hurricane Milton, he's coming. He's coming, so be certain that you and your family do what's necessary to keep yourselves safe. And we open up the top, talking about the 55th Annual Northwest Classic. William M. Raines put a 52-12 beat down on Jean Ribot. Now, I never played a single down of football. But come on. Trojans, I'm rooting for you. This is the 7th year, possibly the 8th year in a row that you all have lost to the Vikings. Fight back. Stand up. Throw some dirt in their eye. Do something. Y'all got to start cheating at this point. I'm all about fair wins, but at this point, a win is a win. At this point, Rebolt, y'all got to do something extra because the playbook ain't getting it. Okay? Just don't tell them I told you that. But y'all got to do something different because y'all been losing for far too long. A question for you. Does the name Amit Patel ring a bell? Amit Patel. Well, if the name doesn't ring a bell, the situation may. He is the ex-Jaguars employee who stole $22 million from the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm going to be honest with you. Depending on how this game goes today against the Indianapolis Colts, we may need to add Trevor Lawrence, Evan Ingram, Tyson Campbell. Tevin Campbell, that's the singer. Tyson Campbell and any other Jaguars player. We may need to add them to this list of Jaguars employees that are robbing that organization. But either case, Amit Patel stole $22 million from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Well, guess what? Mr. Patel is now suing FanDuel for $250 million. How does that work? Well, I'll tell you how. Amit Patel, the ex-Jacksonville Jaguar employee who pled guilty to stealing $22 million from the team, has sued FanDuel in federal court, claiming they purposefully ignored their own protocols responsible for gambling and anti-money laundering in order to keep him playing fantasy football. He is asking for $250 million in compensatory and punitive damages. Attorneys for the 31-year-old said he's currently serving a 6.5-year prison sentence at a federal facility in North Carolina. He filed the suit in the Southern District of New York. Defendants, meaning FanDuel, actively and intentionally targeted and preyed on plaintiff with incentives, credits, and gifts to create, nurture, expedite, and/or exacerbate his addiction, with the only possible outcome that he would ultimately hit rock bottom. The suit names a FanDuel employee in particular. His name is Brett Krause, who was Patel's VIP host at FanDuel. So, well, let me talk about what Krause allegedly did, and then I'll share what my thoughts are on it. Playing a major role in the alleged exploitation of Patel's gambling addiction, Krause allegedly messaged Patel numerous times a day, sometimes up to 100 times a day, and would also message him on days he wasn't betting to find out why. At one point, Krause allegedly moved conversations with Patel to his personal phone, specifically to avoid being detected by FanDuel compliance. So when I read that, what comes to mind for me, sometimes, organizations, casinos, things of that nature, if they identify someone as being a whale, a high roller, someone with a lot of money that spends a lot of money in the gambling thing or whatever, they'll usually assign like a handler to that person or a concierge to that person to make certain all their needs are met, so on and so forth. And so Mr. Patel is essentially saying that Brett Krause, the FanDuel employee, he exploited that, basically trying to get Mr. Patel to gamble even when he wasn't gambling, furthering his addiction to continue to gamble. I don't know how this whole thing is going to shake out, but it kind of seems like that could set a very interesting precedent if he is indeed awarded this lawsuit against FanDuel. Because can you imagine the other organizations that would then attempt to sue casinos or FanDuels and these other betting apps because of their addiction, and saying that, oh, well, they're trying to capitalize off this addiction. They're trying to use me. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. 833-758-1065. That's 833-758-1065. If you'd like to jump on here on Front Page Jacksonville and share your thoughts, share your opinions on some of these different topics that we're touching on. Now, this next one is concerning and very disconcerting in a lot of ways. Did you hear this past week, it was shared in the news that 19 teachers have been removed from Duval County Public School classrooms. 19 teachers have been removed from Duval County Public School classrooms. Now, it's very difficult as it is to get teachers in the classroom to actually educate. It's no secret that the landscape of education has become very challenging for educators for a number of different reasons. A few weeks ago, we spoke about the unfortunate incident in Georgia with the school shootings. Just last week, we had Duval County School Board member Darrell Willey on the show talking about the school closures that were being considered this past Tuesday. And as a matter of fact, I do believe they voted this past Tuesday to close those schools. And now this week, 19 different teachers have been removed from classrooms here in Duval County. So far, about 170 reports have been made. 19 teachers from 16 schools have been removed from the classroom. Well, where is that coming from? How is it that 19 teachers from 16 different schools have been removed? Well, it's because in August, there was an initiative that DCPS rolled out called Know the Line. If you're not familiar with the Know the Line campaign, Know the Line helps to ensure that students, teachers, and parents know the difference between healthy and unhealthy boundaries. So that onus is being placed on the educators with knowing and understanding what healthy and unhealthy boundaries are. So healthy boundaries include communication, physical contact, and meetings. So let's talk about communication first. Under the communication boundary, there should be no interactions between students and employees via phones, text, or social media. The only appropriate communication outside of school between employees and students should be with the following strict approved monitored platforms: Teams, Rooms. Of course, these are on the district's new app. Email from the duvalschools.org account. Even with these platforms, one-on-one communication is discouraged. Physical contact. Both employees and students are discouraged from any physical contact beyond a handshake, high five, or fist bump. And then meetings. We encourage employees to plan ahead so they're not alone with students. There are certain cases where this may be avoidable. For example, when school counseling, mental health, or physical health services are being provided. In either case, each of these areas fall underneath the Know the Line initiative that the DCPS put in place. So apparently, 170 reports were made. And of those 170 reports, 19 teachers were removed from the classroom. As recently as this past week, a health teacher at La Villa Middle School, that teacher faces allegations for inappropriate communication with a student that was of a sexual nature. Parents, I'm a parent. I would love to know your thoughts on that. 833-758-1065.
Hot 1065 gives you
833-758-1065 is the number to call. What are your thoughts on what's happening right now with Duval County Public Schools? 19 teachers being removed. That's a lot of teachers in a very short period of time. Very, very short period of time to have so many teachers removed from the classroom. I believe it was either at the tail end of last school year, there was a situation at Douglas Anderson High School as well, involving another teacher. So I'm glad that the new superintendent has incorporated the Know the Line initiative. In addition to that, with the Know the Line initiative, so we spoke about the three areas that Know the Line covers: communication, physical contact, meetings. But what it also does is it gives parents and students a process, a platform by which they can report concerns that they have surrounding any potential, not just teachers, but DCPS employees that may overstep that line. I don't know if that's a process or procedure that was in place previously. I don't know if parents knew who they could contact or where they could file those reports in the past. But now they have that. They now know. They now know. And since that's been put in place, 170 reports have been made. Of those 170 reports, 19 teachers have been removed from the classroom from 16 different schools. And the story didn't give a list of the 16 schools. I'm not sure if any of the news outlets have reported who those 16 schools are, but 16, that's a large number. That's a lot of schools comprised of 19 different teachers that have been removed from the classroom in a situation, as I stated at the top of this story, where it's already challenging to fill the classroom with teachers. Because from a pay standpoint, teachers aren't getting paid enough money. They need more dinero. Behavioral challenges within the classroom. The pay that teachers do receive, they don't get paid enough to have to deal with that. They get paid to educate, not referee. But they're facilitating. They're now being asked to, have to navigate these situations if there's an active shooter. We're asking a whole lot from teachers in a situation where it's already challenging to find teachers to put in the classroom. And now 19 teachers have been removed due to concerns for inappropriate behavior. This is Front Page Jacksonville. We have more on the way in just a moment.
Front Page Jacksonville resumes on Hot 1065.
833-758-1065 is the number to call if you'd like to hop on Front Page Jacksonville and share your thoughts and opinion on any of the topics that we've discussed during today's show. Now, I have a gentleman in the studio with me right now. He is the president of the local International Longshoreman Association, Local 1408, Mr. Warren Smith. Warren, welcome to the show, man. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, Warren and I, we had a chance to chop it up a little bit during the break. And so, Warren, I'm going to let the listening audience in a little bit on this conversation. So talk to us, brother. Where are you from?
I'm from right here in Jacksonville, born and raised. I'm a native of the Grand Park area. I went to Rains, go Vikings.
Uh-huh.
I think everybody heard about that victory on yesterday.
52-12.
Yeah, kind of, that's what happens when you itch your bond.
But Warren, you're sitting in the studio wearing Reebok colors, though, my boy.
Well, I got dressed in the dark.
you want to support the Vikings? The Trojans as they're mourning today. That loss. So you want to show that you stand in solidarity.
Yeah, I'm trying to disguise myself. It might be some headhunters out.
Hilarious, man. So here it is. Born and raised right here in Duval County, Grand Park area. Went to Rains. Yesterday was the 55th annual Northwest Classic, and you shared something that I thought was very key. We'll have an opportunity to speak about just what things have looked like this past week for yourself and the other members there of the ILA. But you mentioned that you all are involved in the community and that you support some of the different schools in the community as well. Share with us a little bit about you all's involvement here in the community in Jacksonville.
I mean, for years, we would tithe into our community, by way of people just asking for donations or, now since my administration started, when we initially started, I think we went to Rains, we went to Northwestern, we went to KIP, we've gone to schools, you have some of our members that put together a coalition of guys who would go out and they would mentor students in these various schools and talk to them about potentially becoming a longshoreman, because everybody's not going to college. Everybody's not necessarily going even to a trade school. Yeah. And on the docks, everything is on the job training. So we began to go out and actually recruit kids to come in and be the next generation of longshoremen. And, over the years, we've put computer labs in schools. We, anything that we can, we've sponsored the band, sponsored, the library, sponsored the football team. Anything that we can do to be a beacon of light in our community is what we have done and we'll continue to do as best we can.
I love that you mentioned not everybody is going to go to college. Not everybody's going to go to trade school. It is not for everybody. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that you gentlemen are sharing and showing another way, another option, so that they can have a productive and successful career and future for themselves, I think it's key. Off the top of your head, and I know it's an off-the-cuff question, off the top of your head, how has that recruitment process been for you when you all go into the schools and share with these young men an opportunity to work on the docks?
Well, for a lot of people who don't have a clear alternative or life plan, it becomes a beacon of hope. It becomes a guide, and it's not a hard sell because, longshoremen traditionally are second, third, fourth, now we're getting the fourth and fifth generation. Wow. And so it's just like talking to our own kids where, John Q. Public might see a child at an alternative school who's troubled and they've gotten into trouble and they've been kind of burdened with society or whatever, with poverty. Mm-hmm. We see an opportunity to change lives. We have several former felons who are on the docks, and, to our credit, we have a system in place that actually shows that anti-recidivism can work, and so they become productive citizens because they're not burdened by poverty. 90% of crime happens out of poverty, happens out of necessity. And so we have a way of showing people that there's an alternative lifestyle that you can lead. You can become a productive citizen, not just a productive citizen, but that you can make a damn good living in the meantime.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. What led you to becoming a port worker?
Well, I'm a third-generation longshoreman, and I have two sons who are now fourth-generation longshoremen.
Wow.
So for me, it was, I think, a need just to meet and to know my father. My father, growing up in a household, in a two-parent household, it's a little bit different when you have a longshoreman at the helm, because the longshoreman, 9 times out of 10, is at work. They talk about these awesome salaries and, all this money that we make, but they don't say that, that you miss everything in trying to get that money and trying to elevate and lift your family out of poverty into a good, sustainable middle-class family. There are a lot of hours that you have to put in order to achieve that.
You mentioned that wanting to have a stronger relationship with your pops is what led you to becoming a longshoreman. Mm-hmm. Were you able to accomplish that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In a lot of ways, and I tell people, and there's no discredit to my father, we have a wonderful relationship and always have, but I tell people in a lot of ways I met my father on the docks. Although I always knew him, although he was always in the home, but being able to spend that time and to understand what it is that he went through to provide what me and my siblings had.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive into it, man. Here it is. You come from a family of longshoremen. Your sons are now longshoremen. You have an opportunity to get into the community and share with other young men the opportunity to change their lives and their family lives with becoming longshoremen. But then this past week, we saw a situation where not just here in Duval, but if I'm not mistaken, throughout the East Coast, the longshoremen went on strike.
Absolutely.
Talk to us about that. I'm sure it wasn't an easy decision, because if you, the listener, if you don't know this, y'all weren't getting paid during that time.
No.
While you were on strike.
Not at all.
And so I'm certain it wasn't an easy decision to come to. Talk to us about what led up to this strike and your thought process with making a decision to get behind it.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to thank my brothers and sisters who took the hard stance and voted unanimously, I want to add, unanimously, overwhelmingly, to take the stance that we did. And it wasn't for anybody, it was for us.
Okay, yeah.
It was for us. We decided to take the stance. It was a very hard thing to do. International President Harold Daggett did tell us that if we could not get a deal, that implied that we were worth what we know we are, then we would be taking the streets. That is a hard thing, because John Q. Public now comes into play. Media gets involved, and things get misconstrued. You heard, and everybody heard, well, we're requesting a 77% raise. We don't feel that we were warranted. We know that we were warranted in requesting that type of raise. I tell people all the time, we are human. Looking at us working through COVID, when the whole world shut down, we had to keep going. Member after member after member got sick.
Wow.
Some for months on end. Member after member after member died. Because on the docks, we can't social distance. There's no such thing. Social distancing is death. You can't work alone. If you work alone, then you're working very unsafely. Well, that being said, guess what? These are people that you spend 18 to 20 hours a day with. These are people that their families, their wife. Your best friend is always going to be a longshoreman. If nobody in the world can find you, there's somebody on the docks who knows exactly where you are, and they can go and they can put their hands on you. We eat together. We huddle up in corners on, and try to get a little rest together. We vacation together. Everything we do, longshoreman is less of a job and more of a lifestyle. But that being said, when you begin to see coworker after coworker, these are people that are as close or sometimes closer than your family, and they're getting sick and they're toted off the job and they're dying. Imagine what that does to the morale. Imagine what that does to your psyche about your own potential future. And we talk about the 50 or so members that we lost. Actually, it was a little more than that, but we don't talk
here
about
in Jacksonville.
Yes, right. Wow. Here in Jacksonville. We don't talk about how many of the scores of us that actually got sick several times while performing this job, and all we were doing is keeping commerce moving, trying to get these respirators off of the ships, trying to get these hospital beds off the ships, trying to make sure that the public had N95 masks, trying to make sure that the latest technologies that were being shipped, you know, and the goods and services that our community needed to just stay afloat, trying to make sure that they continued to have was at our own. It was at the sake of our own health and our safety. Mm-hmm. And to have the thought that I can potentially take this home to my family.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we did all of this while inflation was skyrocketing. We never asked for an additional penny. We were under a contract. We understood. We never asked for hazardous pay. When you see these types of things happening, guess what? You're going to the funerals, but the companies that we work for, they're not there. There's no extenuating moral support. You know, we don't, on the docks, we don't have an HR department. There's no grief counseling. There's nobody that is there to lift us up. We have to be our own praise team. We have to have our own pep rallies, you know, and so it becomes all about the work. And what we're saying is now we want dignity.
Yeah.
We want a salary that implies the dignity that we know we're worth.
And Warren, let me ask, because you just explained what life as a longshoreman is like. And so
some of it.
Some of it, yes, sir. What some of it is like. But specifically how you all did the job because you had a contract, you honored that contract despite COVID, inflation, et cetera, didn't ask for a penny, right? And my mind began thinking about, let's just say, mainstream corporate America, right? The mindset, but you know, I'm going to do the job. I know my boss see I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I know I'm going to get that raise. I'm not going to ask for it. They see how hard I'm working, so I'm sure my work will speak for itself. And when it's time for me to get that raise, to get that promotion, they'll do it just off the merit of what I've been doing up to this point. And so with everything that you all fought through, worked through, without asking for an additional dime, was there ever a moment throughout that process where you all thought, okay, well, when it's time to renew the contract, it won't be no issues with us getting this additional money that we're asking for because of what we've already proven we're willing to do to support, to make certain that the commerce can continue to move. Was that ever a thought?
That was actually being implied to us. And the further we got removed from COVID, the weaker the appreciation of longshoremen became.
And I want to be clear very quickly so that the audience will know who we're speaking about. United States Maritime Alliance. Is that whom that implication was coming from during COVID, that y'all was, we're going to take care of you?
Yes, absolutely.
Got it. Wow. And
we were saying, listen, you going to take care of us.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't anything that we were hiding.
Yep.
It was, listen, it gets to a point after you've seen so much loss, so much death, so much sickness, where you're going to work every day and you're saying to yourself, is this worth it?
Yeah.
You know, is this worth it? And that's not the totality of it. You think about the number of people, you know, the docks pretty much longshoreman industry pretty much has 100% injury rate. It's not a matter of if you'll be hurt, it's when and how bad.
Yeah.
You know, everything from simple abrasions to actual death. We've had, 4 or 5 members that have died in the last 5 or 6 years. You know, we had one guy, one boy was 18 years old. 18 years old. He just started life. Yeah. You know, you think about this wasn't a boy who was out on the street corner selling drugs. He was doing what he was supposed to be doing, and he lost his life in trying to service his community through doing a job that provides goods and services to the community.
Yeah.
And when things like this happen, what we find more often than not is now the company wants to point the finger and they want to assign blame. Why? Because it limits their liability.
So they implied during COVID they was going to take care of you. that didn't happen. Well, it didn't happen. We know now it didn't happen, but how was it conveyed? How did you all realize they weren't going to take care of you the way they were saying they were going to take care of you?
As the negotiations progressed, the pushback, I think it became very evident. And the international president, in his wisdom and in being in the room, some rooms he goes in, I definitely can't get in. But kudos to Harold Daggett for being transparent and coming back to us several times saying, listen, things are not progressing as they should.
Yeah.
These people, they're not talking right. And you all, I'm telling you, if September 30 comes at midnight, and we don't have a signed deal, we're not going into extension, we're not going to keep beating this dead horse, we're going to walk out and let them know that we want dignity.
Yeah. And so that's what happened.
And not just that, but after all we've given, for them to seek to introduce a language into the contract or try to retract the language that we already had that stops automation and semi-automation, after all of this, was a real slap in the face. And I think that may have been the straw that broke the camel's back, is the fact that, well we want to have the flexibility to do this. Not saying that we will. Well, hold it. You all said that you would give better wages, and now you're kind of backtracking on that. So we're not going to trust that. And we want ironclad language in the contract that shields us from that, and them not wanting to do that kind of implies the fact that maybe we did secretly harbor those feelings. It's one thing to speak peace with your mouth, but devise mischief in your heart.
And for the listener, help us understand, why is it that you all were so against automation, at least the way that they were trying to put it into the contract? Because granted, on the surface, those are jobs. And them wanting to at least have the flexibility to use automation, what is it that you all were hearing when you heard about the introduction of automation into the contract language?
Well, it wasn't so much what we were hearing, it's what we know. If you look at the West Coast, they have, I think now, 4 different terminals that are fully automated. You're talking about terminals that don't have a person who works on the terminal.
How many jobs are we talking lost in that situation?
I think at the lowest end, 8,000.
Wow.
So you take a household of, average 5, husband, wife, 3 kids. You're talking about 40,000 people there that have been impacted negatively. And we know through trickle-down economics that, every home that is purchased creates 2 jobs. Well, that's, 8,000 people now who can't purchase a home. And so, those are additional jobs that are lost. That's 16,000 jobs that would have been in the community. And as you do the trickle-down economics, you're talking jobs probably in the magnitude of 15,000, 20,000 jobs that are lost just through automating those 4 terminals. And the thing of it is that America has been slow to react to actually introduce laws that are limiting how this technology can take over and how it can take over. So, we've taken the lesson that was learned from our counterparts on the West Coast and said, we're not going down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. So let's talk about contracts a little bit. So based on what I read in the most recent article, USMX, that's United States Maritime Alliance, agreed to a raise of $4 an hour for the union members on top of the $39 an hour pay. And if I understand correctly, for the next 6 years, it will increase $4 each year. Is that correct?
It's not actual and factual. It's a total $24 wage increase. It's not broken up exactly into $4 per year, but it averages out to $4 a year.
Got it. So got the pay increase. Is the automation language removed from the contract, or is that still in negotiation?
I believe that it's still in negotiations in some, but there's an understanding, and you got to understand that this negotiation played out different than most negotiations, because this negotiation we had the acting Secretary of Labor that was in the room. So they left there with some understandings. To my understanding is that they left the room with understandings of what it will be, and there's a thing called regressive negotiations that is protected by federal laws. And so we know that the company nor the union can engage in regressive negotiating. So, I think that the understanding that they left the room with, especially being that the acting Secretary of Labor, that will get us exactly where we need to be. And I know that has to be so for our President Harold Daggett to leave and to order us off of the lines. He has to have had some type of guarantee. I think that they may still be actually working out the language, 100% of the language with the attorneys, but they had an understanding when they left the room.
Certainly. Mm-hmm. And so, from my understanding, this is a tentative deal that's in place, I believe, through January 15th, if memory serves me correctly. But we know that negotiations, they can go left or they can go right. Mm-hmm. And so if the negotiations go left, January 15th creeps up on us, and if there isn't a concrete contract in place.
You don't even have to finish that statement.
Yes, sir.
Let me say this right
Yes,
here.
sir.
I believe that the climate of longshoremen today was, first of all, we trust President Harold Daggett, which is the only reason we came off of the line. The climate of ILA today is that we're not taking less than we deserve. We want and demand dignity. Let that be understood.
Yep.
We want and we demand a very tiny portion of the profits that we generate for these companies.
Say that part again.
A very tiny portion of the profits that we generate for these companies. You're talking the maritime industry into the trillions of dollars. And for us to be asking for what we're asking for is very minuscule as it relates to the overall picture of what we generate. Okay? So when and if negotiations go left and President Harold Daggett has a problem and he comes to this membership, I guarantee you, in no uncertain terms, we're walking out in this time for the long haul.
Wow. What could that potentially mean for the economy, for the community? If there's a long-term strike, what could that mean?
It would likely cripple the nation.
Wow.
Even this time, there is, I think they're saying now about $7 billion lost, something like that. Overall, that was just not a total 3-day strike. I'll say it, but we did continue to work, and that's a common misconception. We did continue to work because we are human. There are passenger ships that we manned, and the military we manned. We have to keep servicing our defenses abroad, and so we continued to send all supplies to troops on the front line. We're not inhuman at all. If there had been hurricane relief supplies that would have come, we would have offloaded them. And I issued a challenge, to show how much ILA is community engaged. Like I told them, if you can get those shippers to ferry those goods for free, we'll unload them for free. And then we'll send that ship right back out into the ocean until the strike is off. But long-term effects and how can it affect $5 billion a day, several other industries that are shut down simply because they can't get the parts they need to keep a service line going or keep they can't get raw goods or raw materials that they need to produce something. They can't get the raw paper they need to make paper towels, toilet paper, diapers, sanitary napkins. That's what it means, And so after about a week and a half, 2 weeks, then you begin to see those jobs begin to lay off until longshoremen get a deal. And at that point, everyone hates a longshoreman. But, to the point that I've always said is that they advertised very heavily about the 77% raise, but they did not advertise the fact that one CEO gave himself a $4 billion Christmas bonus. And one company paid every employee a Christmas bonus equivalent to 50 months of their salary. And even after all of that, still made $89.6 billion in profits.
Wow.
All by the hands of longshoremen. But when longshoremen come and say, hey, the 85,000 of us would like to split $2 or $3 billion, we don't have any more. We're all out, and I think that's our plight.
Yeah.
Is that dignity. I keep going back to that word, that dignity. They didn't see, and to my point, they didn't see the lives lost. They did not see the people who were dying. They don't see when one of our people are hit by a machine or injured on the job, and we have to tote these people off, and we have to clean up the blood. And they don't see that.
Yeah.
That's for us. We have to heal ourselves. We have to be the ones who bear that burden, and we have to, kind of become a pep rally again, and we have to hype and get morale back up through all of this. But all they see is just keep this ship turning, keep commerce moving. And that's our job.
Yeah.
We don't complain about it. We don't put it out there, but there are tears that are shed. Our hearts get heavy. Our spirits get wounded when we go through these situations. When there are 5 ships on the board, but we have a coworker who's died, and we have to decide whether we're going to the funeral or whether we're going to work the ship. Not a ship ever stops because a longshoreman dies.
Yeah.
No matter how hard we're hurting, we're still required to be there and to turn these ships out, and they even had a riddle about it years ago on the job. And they would say, when the mule buys another one. When the man dies, hire another one. But whatever you do, keep commerce moving.
You're listening to Front Page Jacksonville. I'm Octavius Davis. My guest in the studio is Warren Smith. He is the president of the local 1408 International Longshoreman Association, sharing with us what progressed to the strike, where things currently stand in contracts negotiations. But Warren, you were also just elaborating on the impact. If those negotiation conversations go left, a long-term deal is not able to be found, you all are ready to strike for the long haul, and you spoke about what that could mean for the economy. Thank you. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, I can clearly see why you are the president of the local 1408. You got a little Martin Luther King Jr. in you, my boy. You got a little bit of that MLK in you. But serious question, how can the community continue to support the local 1408?
Well, before I get into that, I really want to thank the community. The community showed up for us in a very real way. Even after, not many people knew that this was actually coming before it came. They started to report on it maybe just a few days, on a massive scale, maybe just a few days before it happened. But after we began to strike and we actually got out on the picket lines, man, we had people who were coming by in the scores and dropping off water and Gatorade. I think Elevation, I want to thank them publicly, Elevation Lounge. They provided lunch for us one day. You had the ladies from the Blue Building, man. They just came and they showed up one night with trays and trays of sandwiches. You had the Circle K that was right there on the corner who kept just providing stuff for us. The Soul Food Express right there on 21st Street, showed up. Chagriers, they showed up and put in. And I want to say thank you to this community. Other unions, the teachers union came and stood with us. AVSME, people from the AFL-CIO, the locomotive engineers and trainmen union supported us. CWA, IBEW, oh Lord, 177, let me not forget them. I'm talking about in a massive massive way. I think the sheet metal workers, even the Teamsters, Wow. And sometimes we cross jurisdictional lines, but they stood united with us on this one. And I really want to thank the community, but even out of all of those unions that supported, there were John Q. Public that kept coming up, and they were bringing things, but they were also just the average one just stopping by, just blowing the horn, slowing down. Hey, you all are doing the right thing. Hey, we're supporting you all. We're with you, because I think that they understood that we're standing in the gap.
Yeah, absolutely.
For all of blue collar America. Even for Governor DeSantis, in his statements that, he was going to deploy the National Guard and the State Guard to somehow bring order as though we had been disorderly and to begin to work our ships. That was such a shame. Here's a man who always preaches America first. And here you are choosing foreign flag shipping lines over American workers. Mm-hmm. These profits that they're generating, they're not staying here in America.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Yep.
They're crossing the Atlantic. They're crossing the Pacific, and they're taking their money with them. It's us who are spending money. We're building homes. Our children go to school in our communities. I dare you not support us.
Yeah.
And we're supporting everyone through the job that we do. Shame on DeSantis for not standing and demanding fair and equitable wages for Florida citizens. I say that in a very real way. Shame on him. And I would hate to see if he had actually followed through on his promises, because we're going to stand our ground.
Well, and I think you articulated it perfectly. You demand dignity.
Absolutely.
You demand your dignity, and you're going to get it. And I'm very grateful that you stopped by Front Page Jacksonville to share with myself and the rest of the community, not just the negotiation part and the contract part, but everything that the local 1408 does right here in the community. Thank you, Brother Warren, for everything that you all do, everything that you've done. And myself and Front Page Jacksonville, we're a friend. We want to see you continue doing it right here in the community. Thank you for hanging out with us today.
I appreciate you, my friend.
This is Front Page Jacksonville. We'll be back in just a moment.
Front Page Jacksonville, Sundays from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. For show episodes, go to hot1065fm.com. We are Hot 1065.
833-758-1065 is the number to call if you'd like to jump on Front Page Jacksonville. Man, Warren Smith, the president of the International Longshoreman Association, Local 1408, just came in here and just lit the microphone up. Thank you so much once again, Warren, for coming in and sharing with myself and the community just the importance and significance of the local ILA and everyone else along the East Coast fighting for your dignity with the most recent strike that happened this past week. Congratulations on being able to get the tentative contract in place, and will definitely be in support of that long-term deal being instituted by the January 15th deadline. 833-758-1065 is the number to call if you'd like to jump on Front Page Jacksonville. In addition to the longshoreman strike, today we also spoke about the 19 teachers removed from 16 different schools here in Duval County. Why were those 19 teachers removed? Well, because 170 reports were made with the new Know the Line campaign that was instituted back in August. 170 reports were made of concerns of teachers who may have potentially crossed that line, the line of appropriate and inappropriate behavior with students. We also spoke about Amit Patel. Amit Patel, he's the former Jacksonville Jaguar employee who stole $22 million from the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's now suing FanDuel for $250 million. Claiming that they exploited his gambling addiction and exacerbated that whole process of him ultimately stealing the $22 million from the Jacksonville Jaguars. On October 1st, the state of Florida released 34 new laws. 34 new laws went into effect on October 1st here in the state of Florida, specifically the Florida public sleeping ban. So what does that mean? Well, now it's against the law to sleep in public and do any camping of that nature in public places. The city of Jacksonville, Mayor Deegan, she does have a plan in place to help those individuals who are homeless or displaced. However, it didn't quite make it into the city's budget this year, but there are some plans and conversations still being had on how they can continue to support those individuals who are in need of additional services. If someone is found to be sleeping in public places, it could result in a $50 fine and up to 30 days in jail. We talked about the Menendez brothers. So Netflix released a movie about the Menendez brothers situation that happened. I think that was probably back in the 90s. Well, Kim Kardashian is petitioning for them to be released. She doesn't believe that they should be in prison anymore now that more information and insights about their case has been released publicly. We also talked about Israel being under attack. Israel is on the brink of war with 7 different groups. But this past week has been very active, unfortunately, to the sounds of missiles and destruction there in that region of the world. And Hurricane Milton is making his way through the Gulf Coast, approaching Florida this week. Hopefully you and your family have taken all the necessary precautions to protect yourselves. I need to go ahead and get my hurricane kit prepared. I'm not even going to hold you. We didn't do it with Hurricane Helene, but I think we need to go ahead and get some additional water as well as some snacks. Make sure we got necessary flashlights and everything else in place. Our hurricane evacuation plan in case they call for that. That way we can make certain that we're safe throughout this process. And we kicked off the show with the 55th annual Northwest Classic. For 7 years in a row now, Raines has put the beat down to Ribault High School. So we on this Sunday morning, you might need to lift Ribault up in prayer. They might need some help from on high to eventually beat Raines next year. 833-758-1065 is the number to call if you'd like to get on Front Page Jacksonville to discuss any of those topics. One final topic today, UNF faculty has filed a grievance. The University of North Florida chapter of the United Faculty of Florida filed a grievance accusing the university of failing to honor the terms of its contract. Well, that seems to be a theme this week, considering we just met with the local 1408 ILA of the Longshoreman Association. At issue with the UNF faculty grievance, at issue is whether peer comparison can be considered when determining whether professors can keep their tenure status. Well, apparently, the faculty claims that that peer comparison language wasn't going to be used, not the peer comparison language, but peer comparison. Peer comparisons weren't going to be used initially. But now they're saying that, hey, hold up. That's what we're seeing in this email. In an email sent to faculty back in September, the university pushed back on the union's claims, arguing that peer comparisons are required to be part of post-tenure review due to a Board of Governors regulations. Well, what is a peer comparison? What does that mean in the academia world? Peer groups are identified by institutions in order to compare and measure themselves in certain areas, i.e. enrollments, completions, tuition rates, graduation rates, and so forth, to other institutions with similar characteristics or missions. So essentially, peer comparison is their way of seeing how these professors are measuring up against other professors in other universities in their respective area of education. Well, the union is saying, no, we don't want that. We don't want our tenure status to be based on what's happening in other universities. We want it to be based on our own merit right here. Well, what is tenure? Why is tenure status so important to educators? Well, I'll tell you. Tenure is a type of academic appointment that protects its holder from being fired or laid off, except for cause of extraordinary circumstances, such as financial issues or program discontinuation. So in layman's terms, the faculty members there at UNF, they want to ensure they can secure tenure, i.e. job security. They want to make certain that there aren't going to be any factors based on what I'm reading. This is my understanding of what I read. They want to ensure that potential external factors aren't going to impact their ability to acquire tenure at UNF, which, as we just heard, that tenure status gives them protection against being fired or laid off, except for extenuating circumstances. I'm not mad at them. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say to the union, the faculty over there at UNF, I'm going to take a page from Warren Smith's book, Fight for Your Dignity. Fight for your dignity. If you, the whole purpose of you having a union in place is to ensure that you're protected and that you get what you need, get what you deserve as a faculty member. Absolutely. Hold them to task. 833-758-1065. If you'd like to jump on Front Page Jacksonville, we have just a few more minutes before we head out of here. And before we do, this isn't necessarily a story. It was a story earlier in the week. But since the unfortunate hit and run situation with Elijah Williams that took place over on the west side, there have been instances in the news over the past couple of days, as recent as this morning, of teenagers losing their lives throughout the city of Jacksonville. So I just want to share a quick word of encouragement to each of the parents who unfortunately lost their child this week. I want to offer my deepest and sincerest condolences to you. I can't imagine what you may be going through at this moment, but I truly hope, trust, and believe that your family, your neighborhood, loved ones will continue rallying around you to provide support and comfort as you seek to navigate this new normal. Sometimes things aren't fair, and no, it was not fair what happened. I trust, hope, and believe that justice will be served where appropriate and that peace will permeate where necessary in your heart and mind as you and your loved ones seek to remember the child that you lost this past week. Not saying it's going to be easy to move forward. Heaven knows it's going to come with its challenges. But I just want to speak life to your heart and peace to your mind as you seek to do so. Thank you so much for tuning in to Front Page Jacksonville this week. Next week, if you are in the market to purchase a home, I definitely want to encourage you to tune in to Front Page Jacksonville next week. Before you make that purchase, I'll reiterate that. Our guest next week is a real estate agent here in town, and she's going to share some information with us on how we can purchase a home. What are the steps that we need to take? What are the things we need to avoid? What are some of the myths, misconceptions that we have been told that are actually lies? And I don't know about you, but if you're interested in it, she's also going to share with us how we can identify money, free money, that kind of Sounds like an oxymoron to me, free money. But she's going to help us identify free money that's available that can help go towards the purchase of your home. We look forward to catching you next week right here on Front Page Jacksonville.
Front Page Jacksonville, Sundays from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. For show episodes, go to hot1065fm.com. We are Hot 1065.